Well, welcome back to the latest anime and manga news for the week ending May 4th, 2012. It's a slightly different camera setup than usual, but the same news. Starting with some news from Studio Ghibli. Junichi Nishioka, who is the current public relations head for the Ghibli Museum, had a talk recently where he talked about Studio Ghibli, and he announced that there will be no new Studio Ghibli films in 2012. Both Hayao Miyazaki and Isao Takahata are currently working on films, but they're not going to be ready for at least a year. So we have a ways to go for more of those things, which is unfortunate, but hey, what can you say? Meanwhile, on the opposite side of things, still good news, the K-On! Film has earned about $23 million at the U.S. box office. $23 million U.S. in the Japanese box office. And that's out of only 137 theaters. It opened December 3rd, continues to play in some theaters, including 2 in Tokyo. So doing well, that's a lot of money for a Japanese film. So good news there that at least one anime film is doing well. Meanwhile, ANA On the Pond Airlines has announced that they are doing a collaboration with Studio Kara and Neon Genesis Evangelion. They're doing a cross-promotional campaign for the third Rebuild film, You Cannot Redo, which is hilarious, by the way. Hilarious name. They've got wallpapers and so forth, and they've got kind of rebranded ANA using the Nerve logo. So the leaf with ANA in it, which of all of the companies, all the organizations to remind people of, maybe Nerve is not the one that you want to kind of emulate. I'm just saying. Let's see here. Moving on. Let's see here. Yes. So here's an interesting one. 4Kids has been in the courts recently about their rights for Yu-Gi-Oh! And it has been announced they are currently in talks and in finalized talks to sell the rights to all its Yu-Gi-Oh! Related assets to a company called Kidsco Media Ventures, which is owned by Saban. So basically, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is going to be transferred over. Now, this is not finalized yet, but it has been agreed to by all parties, and it's now awaiting authorization from bankruptcy court and things like that. So things could still stop, but still, that's what's going on there. So yeah, it looks like that will be moving over to basically Saban at some point fairly soon. Let's see here. Moving on, here's a fun one. You've heard of the life-size Gundam statue, probably. Well, the folks over working on Macross don't want to be left behind. So they have unveiled a life-size Macross statue and exhibition that they're working on. Still not completely done, but they've got a life-size Valkyrie up there, which is pretty darn amazing. So that's pretty cool. Opens Sunday at the Sunshine City Complex. Full-scale replica of a VF-25F Messiah Valkyrie in Gerwalk mode, as you can tell. So that's pretty darn cool. Not so cool Media Blasters back over here having some issues. There's an article posted on ANN today about some tax issues that Media Blasters has been having. Basically, apparently, they have been filing extensions on their 2008 taxes, basically since 2008. And finally, I think they said someone at the Secretary of State actually stepped in and said, okay, this is ridiculous. And basically said that the corporation is dissolved as far as they're concerned. Now, it's not actually dissolved, but basically they have to resolve all these tax issues to make the company a legal entity in New York, which is where Media Blasters is based. So that's really bad that they've been holding off on paying these taxes, and that finally the state has had to come in and say, look, we can't recognize you as a company anymore because of this. More information over at ANN, going back and forth as to what actually happened and where they are. Media Blasters are still around, they're still okay, they've just got to resolve these isses. They'll still be releasing stuff, but apparently they're in some hot water tax-wise, which is quite unfortunate. See here, finally moving back to Studio Ghibli news, interesting little bit posted just a couple of hours ago today. There was an interview with Toshio Suzuki of Studio Ghibli, where he offered comments on the subject of Western influence on anime, Hayao Miyazaki, and Studio Ghibli. He talked about how there's this term in Japan, seiyo kabare, which is a derisive term for Western influence. Basically, after World War II, there was this shift into basically mimicking and echoing the stuff going on in the West. And interestingly, it shifted from an interest in America to a shift over to Europe with its longer history and culture. And he said this is you can see this in the works of Miyazaki and Takahata, how they work on Heidi Girl of the Alps and 2000 Leagues in Search of Mother, and a lot of these more European stories. Indeed, Horus, Prince of the Sun, and all this European work early in their careers. But then later on, they decided to make stuff using, quote, Japanese protagonists in Japanese settings, where Miyazaki said that he has a debt to Japan that he wants to repay. So that's kind of where things like My Neighbor Totoro and Grave of the Fireflies came from. But finally, Suzuki said that there was this quote that stuck in his mind from neither of them, but just somebody said, it was a good thing that Japan lost the war, because if it had won, it would truly have become an awful country. That's an interesting way of putting it. So that's all the news from this week. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next week. Take care.